It's the final Sixth Doctor TV story, if you count all of the Trial of the Time Lord ones as separate segments. And despite not getting a proper regeneration story or even a proper regeneration scene, how does The Ultimate Foe, The Trial of Time Lord Parts 13 and 14, hold up as a final story, or at least a final on-screen story? Pretty bloody brilliant, and also a really great end to this season-long story. Let's dive into The Ultimate Foe. And welcome to my review of Doctor Who Season 23, Story 4, aka The Trial of a Time Lord Parts 13 to 14, or 13 and 14, because it's only a two-parter, The Ultimate Foe, the fourth segment of Trial of a Time Lord. And this is a really, really, really good finale. This tops the previous two Sixth Doctor season finales. Well, Twin Dilemma technically rounded out season 21. My God, I wish Case of Androzani was that season finale. But it also tops Revelation of the Daleks. It also tops The King's Demons and Time Flight and Logopolis. In fact, if Sharda counts, then it's the best season finale since Sharda. And if it doesn't count, then Armageddon Factor. Maybe even the Invasion of Time. Maybe even the Talons of Wang Chiang. Yes, if Sharda doesn't count, best season finale since the Talons of Wang Chiang, as much as I did like the Invasion of Time and the Armageddon Factor. The rest I didn't think were that great as season finales, with Revelation of the Daleks coming and Logopolis coming the closest to being the best. But The Ultimate Foe, this is a really good story. It starts all, it kind of pretty much explains the whole point of all of this, where the High Council of Gallifrey have been doing scientific meddling on Earth, and they've moved it several billion years to Ravalox and caused a fireball which destroys the planet, and they've kept all of that secret until the Doctor arrives on Ravalox, probably just on one of his normal adventures, but with him getting in the way and all of these secrets potentially there, then the High Council did a deal with the Valiard, a dark version of the Doctor between his 12th and 13th incarnations. Not sure how that works now with David Tennant to Matt Smith. It's the end of time. But the Valiard has been given the deal with that. If he can get the Doctor executed for committing the crime of meddling into the affairs of other peoples and planets, then he will have the Doctor's remaining lives. So incarnations 7 to 13, or in the case we know, the 7th Doctor through to the 11th Doctor, including the War and 2nd, 10th Doctors. Yeah, and it's forms all that part of that plan, and also the Valiard can enter the Matrix with his own copy of the Matrix key, Keeper's Key, and he can go in and pretty much change stuff, such as pretty much faking out Peri's death. In Mindwarp BPS, Peri turns out to be alive and is living as a warrior queen with Yukarnos. By the way, we get a shot at the end where some I know what the word is. The new series does it a lot. Stock footage. Some stock footage from Mindwarp showing Peri with Yukarnos, and yeah, you couldn't bother to film a new scene with the two of them. Alright. But yeah, Peri's scene is still alive and living with Yukarnos, although some people may want to think she is dead. And it actually expanded media trying to explain this even more, makes it even more complicated. And then the Master also turns up and pretty much explains everything to everyone, because he's been watching behind the scenes, and he's sent Zabalon Glitz and Mel to help as the Doctor's defense. Eventually, the Valiant is out and he runs off into the Matrix, so the Doctor and Glitz pursue. And this is all in the first 9 or so minutes. What follows after that is 2 episodes of Matrix fun and trial revelations and excitement, and it's great. I like how it's handled. Robert Holmes and Pip and Jane Baker, with script editor Eric Sayward, did a really great job in wrapping up this finale, this season, with some pretty creative ways throughout the story, and Chris Cloud has some really brilliant direction. The Sixth Doctor is at his best character-wise since Vengeance on Varos, and I think it's a toss-up between this and Vengeance on which performance is the best. Colin Baker is astounding in this story. Mel is tolerable, and Molly Langford does okay. I think she's still a bit annoying in places, but I think she's more tolerable here than Terror the Third Voice, and she's certainly more tolerable than the next story. Michael Jason is allowed to let off his evil side, and the Valiant proves to be a formidable foe in just 2 episodes. Whilst the Master, played by Anthony Ainley once again, is still a brilliant villain, and also has one of those rare occasions where he actually wants to help the Doctor. In this case, for his own sense of again. In this case, just because he wants to kill the Doctor later down the line himself. He also wants to cause havoc on Gallifrey with the reveal of the Time Lord High Council's involvement with Ravolox, and starting an insurrection on Gallifrey, which the Inquisitor has to clean up a little bit later. And even the Keeper of the Matrix has a few good scenes, although why he trips up Mel when she tries to go into the Matrix, I don't know. However, Mel learns from that mistake and is able to give the Keeper a what for in the nugs in order to get into the Matrix properly. Yeah, and despite the 2 episodes being written by 2 different writers, because Robert Holmes, he'd finished writing episode 13, but despite and then he wrote a draft for episode 14, however, he sadly passed away after this point, making Mysterious Planet his final full story, I suppose. Eric Sayward then wrote a version. I don't know if that went through, and then Pip and Jane Baker were asked to finish it. Considering how deconstructed the final 2 episodes could have been from each other, I think they pull it off pretty well. They pull off Robert Holmes's and Eric Sayward's draft and rewrite well. And yeah, there is only really a not so good thing I like about the direction and editing in part 2, in the stat that the Valiant keeps flopping, appearing and disappearing from different points of the Doctor. Now, when he's close to the Doctor talking, that's fine, but when he's all the way over there and he's talking, then he keeps popping forward and forward and forward and forward. When he keeps talking, it kind of feels a bit disconjointed there. It's fine for him just popping all over the place and he's toying with the Doctor and his senses, but when he's at one bit and then he keeps moving forward whilst talking, it kind of feels a bit disjointed. As for the revelations of what the Valiant is up to, he's trying to assassinate the Time Lords at the trial, and yeah, so much for a big evil scheme. And yeah, but there's quite a few good moments, and the Master is a lot of fun, especially in part 14, where he gets a bit more involved in the Matrix stuff. And I like with the Deadly Assassin, we get to jump into the Matrix and explore this world. In this case, the Valiant has seemed to have made it part of it like a Victorian workplace setting in places. I wonder if they went back to Brazil. Actually, don't even know where they went in films, but it looks really nice, Victorian-y style. And there's also some other cool moments where they're going on, like onto the beach, and even in the Master's TARDIS we get some cool stuff. And it's pretty entertaining. It's 55 minutes of fun. This episode, the last episode, is half an hour nearly, because they felt like they couldn't edit it down to 25 minutes. And to be fair, I can see why. It's quite a big episode, and some really good good practical effects where, like, we see the Sixth Doctor in the mud and the hands sort of trying to grab at him, and then when he sinks into the mud, but then he comes back up the mud. Looks like he's coming up some steps and then a little lift. That's really good, and looks really great. And Tony Selby's performance in the story is also really fun, and Glitz is actually more entertaining here than he was in Mysterious Planet. I guess maybe that's how they helped write it. shame they only brought 2 people to help defend the Doctor as witnesses. They didn't bring anyone from Mind Warp or another character from Vervoids or Mysterious Planets or anyone from pre-Trial of a Time Lord to help. I'm still surprised that Romana or Chancellor slash ex-President Flavia would allow such a thing to go ahead, but maybe once the whole insurrection things come around, they find out and they get just as mad, and the Inquisitor says, "Oh, don't worry, I let him off this time." After everything came to light. And speaking of which, the Inquisitor is actually pretty good in this story in some places, and I think Linda Bellingham does a good job there. And at the end, she lets the Doctor off due to the Valiard's trouble causing, and even gives him the offer to become the president of Gallifrey again. This is the 3rd time the Doctor would take or get offered or given that position. He took it in Invasion of Time, where we pretty much forced to take it. Then in 5 Doctors, he was forced to have it. I mean, in Invasion of Time, he took it he demanded to have it, and then in 5 Doctors, he was pretty much given it without any choice. And then here, he's pretty much offered it, which he denies, of course. In 5 Doctors, he runs off and therefore abandons his responsibility, leaving Chancellor Flavia to take over, as mentioned at the start of Trial of a Time Lord. And of course, there will be a 4th time where the Doctor, for the 2nd time, well, I suppose maybe 3rd time, becomes president of Gallifrey in Hellbent and takes over. So that's Doctors 4, 5, 6, and 12 that have either been made president or offered the presidency. Whether that will happen again is uncertain due to the current state of Gallifrey in the new series. Yay. Maybe Chris Chibnall or someone can fix that. I don't see the 13th Doctor being the next president or anything, but just fix the Gallifrey stuff already. But yeah, Trial of a Time Lord, The Ultimate Foe. This is a really good stuff with some great imagination from both Robert Holmes, Eric Saywood, and Pip and Jane Baker. I say both, I mean across the whole board. It's done some really brilliant performances and some really great stuff, and the story's really good. And there are a few shockingly violent stuff, but I suppose that's more for the to get you off guard, which is the point of The Matrix. Robert Holmes did create The Matrix in The Deadly Assassin, after all. He knows what he's doing. And thankfully, Pip and Jane Baker are able to know what they're doing in the last episode. Thankfully. Maybe with a bit of help from Eric Saywood, but thankfully they knew what they were doing. And all comes down to a very good, pretty entertaining final story. So I'm going to give The Ultimate Foe a 9 out of 10. A very good story. I don't think it's particularly perfect, but I do think this is one of the strongest 6th Doctor stories, and certainly the best story of the season, despite having 3, possibly 4 writers across the story, if counting Eric Saywood's versions. Then I still think it works, and despite that, also that point, I think the 2 parts connect to each other pretty well instead of feeling so disconnected like you might expect. And yeah, and it doesn't even do a World Enough in Time Doctor Falls, where they have different tones despite being the same being a 2-parter. No, they actually it manages to keep the same tone and same storyline throughout. It just works really well. The most difference is probably just comes with the Valiard's plot in the last episode with his overall grand scheme, but maybe that was going to be the case anyway. Whether this was Robert Holmes writing or whether Eric Saywood was writing it, it was probably going to be the same way anyway, so I won't blame Pip and Jane Baker for that. I can blame him for the next story, though, because they wrote the next story, but that's for that review / potential rant. But yeah, I think they did a very good job, all of them. I think everybody did a really great job with The Ultimate Foe, and it wraps up this story, this overall story of the Trial of a Time Lord on a brilliant end. So, that's it. That's the entirety of the Trial of a Time Lord story, and what did I think? Well, actually, I liked it a bit more now than I used to. I still think the Mysterious Planet is a bit of a weak opening. However, Mind Warp is brilliant. Terror of the Vervoids is a ton of fun. And The Ultimate Foe, possibly the best season finale since The Talons of Wang Chang, depending on whether you count Sharda or not. And if you do count Sharda, then it's the best season finale since then. Of course, there will be better season finales coming up in the McCoy era. Not the next season, but then the following 2 seasons. And of course, Series 1, Series 2, possibly Series 3, possibly Series 4, possibly Series 5. Not 6, not 7, well, maybe 7. Maybe not. Not 8, certainly not 9. Definitely 10, not 11. Maybe 12, we'll see. But a couple more better season finales will be coming up, don't worry. As well as a couple of worse ones, and a couple of ones that are not quite as good, but still good. Or at least not as bad as some of the others. Anyway, so that's the Trial of the Time Lord to the Ultimate Foe, and that's the Trial of the Time Lord as a whole. It's actually not that bad, to be honest. I think once you get past Mysterious Planet, then it's actually a pretty good story. As a whole, it's actually pretty good. I still think it would have been better if it was Colin Baker's 3rd season, if they did this. Like with License to Kill, I think that should have been Timothy Dalton's 3rd James Bond film, and I think Trial of the Time Lord should have been Colin Baker's 3rd season. This should have been season 24, and or with a proper regeneration story at the very end. I think the actual season 23 should have come first. Then we get season 24 with Colin Baker. Then maybe either a regeneration story or scene at the very end, or he does season 25, and then we get Sylvester McCoy in for season 26, and then another couple of years. But due to behind-the-scenes action at the BBC pretty much sabotaging the show, basically, or at least trying to sabotage it at the very least, this was not to be the case, and sadly, Colin Baker was forced to be fired, otherwise the show would be cancelled. Literally, they allowed season 24 to be commissioned, but only if Colin Baker was replaced, and they wouldn't even allow him to come back for that season, they wouldn't even allow him to come back for one more story. He was offered to do a regeneration scene as the pre-title scene, but he turned it down, and he's actually apologised for that recently, because he said he doesn't think he wasn't thinking of the fans, and he's sorry about that, although the fans and Nicola Bryant have come to his defence about that bit, and kind of say, it's alright, we still love you. So, yeah, but it's sad to see that the 6th Doctor never got a proper regeneration story on television, and his regeneration scene in Time of the Rani, it's not that great, to be honest. The effect could have been handled a lot better, and just the way it's directed isn't so great. We might talk more about that when we get to that story. However, after the season 23 ranking on this channel, I will be I shall be releasing a review of the 6th Doctor, The Last Adventure on my main channel, where I review the entirety of Big Finish's 6th Doctor, The Last Adventure audio series, which includes his final regeneration, which includes his regeneration story. Now, there's also the Time of the Rani novelisation and books, Spiral Scratch, that sort of have reasons for his regeneration, but like Sharda 2017 being the definitive version of that story, The Brink of Death as the 4th story in this series is technically the definitive 6th Doctor final story. So I'll be reviewing this series, and I'll be explaining how I think Big Finish handled the 6th Doctor's final story, as well as the stories leading up to that one. And then we'll have the 6th Doctor story ranking, which will just be TV, so I can't really include this one, although if I could, it would be probably it would probably take up at least 2, maybe even 3 of the top 5 ranking. In fact, it'd probably even bump up to a top 10 ranking if I could include all 4 stories in that, but it's only TV anyway. But after the 6th Doctor ranking, we'll move on to the 7th Doctor era with Time and the Rani, which opens season 24, and that will feature the 6th Doctor's regeneration into the 7th Doctor. And whilst I haven't seen that bit yet, I've rewatched some clips and some fan edits, but not rewatched the story yet. Whilst I haven't done that yet, I still feel like the 6th Doctor's era has now officially finished, besides some rankings. And of course, whilst I've already filmed my Last Adventure series review, that's still got to go out, so... But once those last 2 rankings and once the Last Adventure reviews are out, that's the 6th Doctor's era done. So I'd just like to take this moment to thank Colin Baker and for giving us the 6th Doctor. Thank you very much, and we will miss you. We will miss all of them, basically. That's always going to be the case. I'm going to be saying this at the end of Sylvester McCoy's era as well. So... yeah, I'm looking forward to Sylvester McCoy's era, though, because I really do enjoy that era. Not so much parts of season 24. There are some parts I do like. However, 25 and 26 are really good. Especially the season 25 opener, which is possibly the best story of the entire classic era. I think fans of my channel will probably know what that story is. Anyway, next time in the Rani after the rankings and after the last adventure review, and I shall see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Yeah, just carry on. AKA The Trial of a Time Lord, segment 4, parts 13 and 14. AKA The Trial of a Time Lord, parts 13 and 14, which pretty much is the fourth. However, Mel does realise. So that's Doctors 4, 5, 6, and 12 that have had some sort of presidency offer or made president. However, Mind Warp, the mysterious. Sorry. The